Hey guys, how's it going? Heidi back again. I'm over here in southwestern Ohio near Dayton, Ohio. It is in the mid 90s. The humidity is very high. I've been hanging out here in the big truck trying to stay cool with my animals. Hang on. I'm over here at my place of employment. Here's my van. Just sitting over there waiting for me to come back home. I will see you in September. Agatha. Agatha is my van's name. And it's too hot for me, so I'm just going to stay out here on the road and work in the big truck. There's my dog, Phoebe. Whoop. I got Vincent and Arthur. Arthur loves to sit up here on top of this cabinet. Alright, so I decided to make this video today because someone asked me to make this video. Got a new t-shirt, which I really love. Alright, getting back to it. So, as I've mentioned before, I've been a truck driver on and off for 25 years. There have been periods of time where I worked as a long-haul driver, and I traveled all over the United States, all 48 states within the continental U.S. And then there were other periods of time, long periods of time, where I worked as a local driver. So as a local driver, you basically punch a time clock, you go into work, you grab your truck and trailer, which is loaded with multiple stops, you go make those deliveries over the course of an afternoon, and then you start picking up smaller loads. That's called less than truckload. And then you bring those back to the terminal at the end of the evening, and you punch a time clock and go home. And you're home every day and off on weekends. I used to do that for a period of time. If you see the trucks out on the highways that are hauling the double trailers, those are all what's called LTL, less than truckload. So those drivers, like I just mentioned, those little trailers are packed full of individual deliveries, and they shuttle those from terminal to terminal throughout the state where they reside in neighboring states. And then when those smaller trailers arrive at the terminal, they get unloaded and dispersed into other smaller trailers to continue on their journey. So if someone orders something small, let's say you order a refrigerator, it's coming from Missouri and you live in Ohio, that might come across this interstate less than truckload on those doubles. But when you see these long trailers like this guy over here, and like what I'm hauling today, I haul 53-foot trailers. You can see back there in my mirror. These are usually what's called truckload. Truckload means you go, if you're the driver, you go to a place to pick up your load. They'll load you full. Usually it's a warehouse or a manufacturing place or a distribution center, and they'll load you up. A lot of the times it'll be all the same items. So for me, a lot of the times mostly I pick up food commodities. So let's say, for example, I go to a Pepsi distribution center. They might just load my entire trailer full of Gatorade, and it might be all like the same flavor. And then I'm going to take that to a smaller Pepsi distribution center somewhere. So let's say I get loaded in Indianapolis, and then I might take it up to Minnesota to a smaller location where they'll unload it, and then they're gonna put that stuff I brought, the Gatorade, they're gonna put it in their warehouse, and then over the next week or whatever, they're gonna load smaller portions of that into smaller delivery vehicles, and then that's gonna go all over Minnesota. So kind of give you an idea of how that works. So I've done both. I've done the long haul, which is what I'm doing right now, where I travel. Right now I travel between Ohio and South Dakota. So I'm just doing the Midwest. I don't do the South, I don't do the East, and I don't do the West. I'm just like the Great Lakes region, all the way down to like, say, Missouri, Kansas. So between Ohio, South Dakota, which is to include Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, South Dakota, Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma. That's pretty much all the places where I go. That's it. I don't go anywhere else these days. In past years, I've had jobs where I drove a lot further, where I might go all the way out to Washington State or California or Texas, or I might go to the East Coast and head up to Connecticut or New Jersey or Florida, things like that. I don't do that anymore because I find that's really Long haul like that, going from one coast to the next, I think is, in my view, it's a lot of stress because you'll get loads going to these far-flung places you've never been to. So every day is kind of a big question mark and a mystery, which in my view makes the job a lot harder. So if I like come over here to Dayton, Ohio, and I pick up a load here, and they were to send me all the way to Florida, well, from here to Florida, it's not great. You're going along one of the major thoroughfares, Interstate 75. I'm going to be going through a lot of really big cities. There's a lot of traffic. It's heavily traveled route along the eastern seaboard. I don't want to do that, so I don't do that any longer. I just work for this small family company, and what we do is basically called SERPU Regional. So I'm just doing a very small area in the middle of the country. And the area where I travel, like I just mentioned, between Ohio and South Dakota, all of those Midwestern states in between there are basically all really flat. It's mostly farmland. There aren't very many major cities along the route. The only major cities are like Indianapolis, Chicago, let me think, Kansas City. Those are like the only big cities I really travel through, and I can plan my route to where I drive through those cities when it's not rush hour. So late in the evening, late in the morning, or sometimes I'll just avoid them altogether and reroute and go around. And I like that. I like the consistency of the job I have now, where I'm just working in this small area in the middle of the country. It's light traffic. It's all mostly farming communities. And so it makes my job really easy to just cruise along. And I go to the same places all the time. I'm constantly going east, west, a little bit north. So I basically have all my routes memorized. I have all of the state routes and interstates I travel on. I have pretty much memorized at this point because I've been doing this now for almost 4 years with this company. Actually, almost 5 years. And it just makes the job really easy for me to be familiar with the area where I'm traveling. So no surprises. I'm also familiar with the weather patterns in that area. And it makes it more like a regular job where I'm not being challenged. Oh, I got a load going all the way out to Los Angeles. Now I got to travel all the way across the desert. Like, I don't have to deal with any of that. I don't have to worry about weather in these far-flung places or just traffic patterns in these far-flung places. Just staying in the middle of the country makes the job easy for me. The reason why I'm talking about trucking a whole bunch right now is because someone asked me to make a video about truck driving and how this could be a good opportunity for middle-aged people right now, the way the economy's going. Of course, truck driving always gets a bad rap. People will tell you, oh, it's really hard to handle this huge equipment, and the hours are super long, and you have to deal with traffic, and all of those things are true. There is some challenges for this job, and most of the time there are a lot of hours involved. So the least I will ever work is usually 55 hours a week. I usually don't work any less than that. Most of the time I work at least 65 hours a week, and other weeks I try to push myself up above 70. I know that sounds insane, but the more I work, the more money I earn. All right, so now that I've talked about that a little bit, let me get into the rest of this. I just feel like with the way things are going right now in the economy, where prices are going up, housing costs are going up, food prices are going up, healthcare is going up, people are having a hard time maintaining their jobs, people are getting laid off, different, in the private sector and also in, federal jobs. And if there are a lot of people like me who are, I'm basically a senior citizen, I'm in my 50s, so I'm pushing upwards of age 60. A lot of people in my age bracket in their late 40s, 50s, going into their 60s, may be finding it difficult to survive in this economy, difficult to maintain whatever job they have. And I think truck driving, even though I'm talking about, it is a bit of a challenge, and it's a lot of hard work sometimes. It's a good option for a number of reasons. So the first reason I'll talk about is the fact that I'm a company driver. So that means the company I work for, they mostly have company drivers. They like to use new Freightliner Cascadia trucks. The one I'm in right now is a 2-year-old truck. So their trucks are usually anywhere from brand new to 3 or 4 years old. After they get up over about, I think, 500,000 miles. It might be 600,000 miles. They trade them in. So what they do is they lease these trucks from Freightliner, and they just switch them out on a regular basis. So the drivers are always driving relatively new equipment. Same thing goes for their trailers. The trailer I have right now is a 3-year-old trailer. Most of their trailers are only about brand new, or all the way up to about 3 years old, maybe 4 years old tops. Once they get to that point, they sell them and they get brand new ones. So they keep really nice equipment that's not very old. All their equipment is less than 5 years old, like I just talked about. A lot of the companies out here do that because the truck is leased on and the company takes care of all the equipment. As a company driver, I get paid a mileage rate, and I also get paid an hourly rate when I'm on delays or when I'm in the shop getting a repair. So that's how it's set up. I don't pay for anything. I think there's a misconception out there amongst people who aren't really familiar with trucking that they think, oh, you have to pay. No, you don't pay anything. You're basically an employee. You show up, you get in the truck, you pay nothing. The company covers all the costs. And the truck you're living in, like this truck I have right here, a little bit messy, but yeah, it's like a tiny apartment. I have a refrigerator, I have an inverter down here, which has got a 110 outlet. I've got storage, I've got 2 beds in here. There's room for me and my pets. It's like a micro apartment. The company is paying for everything. I have air conditioning, which I have cranked up right now. Heat in the winter, obviously. Everything that you would need in an apartment for living is inside this truck. So what does that mean? Obviously, that means I can live for free in this truck indefinitely. And there are lots of truck drivers out there that do just that. Millions, in fact. I'm one of them. I usually work. Now, you can work as much as you want as a truck driver, as much as you want or as little as you want. I choose to work as much as possible. I usually work about 23 days out of each month. I'm out here on the road living in the truck with my pets. And all the amenities that I would need for an apartment are right here in the truck. So I'm living in the truck for free. That means I'm not paying utility bills. I'm not paying rent. I'm not paying for apartment insurance. I'm not paying for cable. I'm not paying for any of the things that you would pay for in an apartment or a house. And then when I'm home from the road, as I've talked about a bunch of times, I stay in my van over here, which I'm actually still building. It's getting very close. I'd say that van's about 80% finished. All right. Now let me get back to talking about the truck driving. So, what a lot of drivers do is they live in the truck, and that allows you to put most of your money back into the bank. So for a lot of people out here in the civilian world who aren't truck drivers, who are struggling working a job, struggling to pay rent, struggling to pay utility bills, struggling to come up with enough money to buy food from one week to the next, if you were to make a big leap of faith and become a truck driver, you could get rid of all of that burden, all that overhead in your life, and just live in a truck, travel around, depending on what company you work for. Like I just talked about, this is a small family operation I work for. They only have 100 drivers, and I just stay in this small Midwestern area in the middle of the country. But there's tons of jobs out there in trucking where you can travel from one coast to the other, East Coast to West Coast. You can travel in the South. It's really up to you to choose the job that best suits you for what you want to do. Now, this isn't going to be like van life where you're traveling around and seeing the sights and going and staying in beautiful national forests and all of that stuff. You will be traveling. You may not be traveling to places you want to travel to, but still the fact remains you are traveling. And I enjoy this, even if my view is just cornfields. I enjoy that. I'm not cooped up inside a business, a warehouse, a manufacturing place, or an office, staring at ugly white walls. I am staring out the window. I am looking at the sky and the clouds and the greenery, depending on where I'm at. There are interesting things to see. I get to see the sunrise, the sunset. So it does have its perks as far as looking out the window. When the weather's nice and it's not super hot like today, I roll the window down. I got a nice fresh breeze. So this is what I call a van life hack. If you take and you marry being a truck driver with van life, then what you have is you're more in control of how you're spending your hard-earned money. So for me, I earn my money. I can buy the things I need. For example, I bought that van and I spent a bunch of money building it. And then the rest of the money I don't have to spend on utility bills and rent or a mortgage. I'm taking the money and I'm squirreling it away into my savings account. So this may not be the best idea for everyone out there, or even a big group of people, but the reason why the person asked me to make the video is to explain how becoming a truck driver, especially if you're desperate and you're really struggling in this economy, and maybe you're an older person and maybe you're having a hard time finding a decent job, truck driving is still an option for you. All right, now that I've beleaguered that point, let me talk about how you get into it. So, depending on your situation, you might be able to apply for a government grant to pay for trucking school. Trucking school is not very expensive. When I went back in 2000, 25 years ago, it was $5,000. Now, I don't know how much it costs today. I haven't really looked into it because it's not something I need to know, but I don't think it's super expensive. There should be grants available. I know my son-in-law a few years back got a grant to go to trucking school, and he didn't have to pay for it. It was covered because he was going through a transition and changing jobs, and so he had a need. So that could be the case, or it might be the case of maybe you can do payments depending on where you live. That might be an option. So it's something to look into. Once you get into the truck driving school, you know, they're going to teach you the basics. They're going to teach you how to inspect the equipment. They're going to familiarize you with all the different components of the truck. These are things you're going to want to pay attention to once you become a driver. It's something that I do every day. I inspect my truck and my trailer multiple times a day. I inspect my tires and my brakes. I listen to the engine. I pay attention to like smells. You know, I want to pay attention to make sure, you know, does it look like something's getting ready to break down on the vehicle? Do I need to get a new tire? You know, do I need to get something repaired before it's too late? That kind of thing. I don't want to end up broken down on the side of the road. So yeah, they're going to familiarize you with the equipment, you know, how these things work. Back in the old days, we had to learn how to drive stick shift. All the trucks were standard stick shift. They were either 10 speeds or 12 speeds or 14 speeds. These days, they're all automatic. So all I do, here's the shifter. I just shift it into drive, neutral, or reverse. That's it. It's that simple. There's no shifter here. I don't have to deal with that anymore. Back in the years ago, I had to shift, which I didn't think it was a big deal. I learned how to do it. It's a little bit different than a car. It's a little more finesse to it, but once you figure it out, it's pretty easy. But like I'm saying, most of these companies today just have automatics, so all you have to do is put it in drive just like you would a regular car. So they're going to teach you all the things you need to know about the truck. They're going to teach you how to maneuver around turns. They're going to teach you how to back into docks. They're going to teach you how to navigate as you're traveling across the country. Once again, when I started out in truck driving, we had to use an atlas. I still have an atlas right here. Hang on a second. Yeah. I have a commercial road atlas. So back in the old days, we would have to get the atlas out and plan our trips. Well, nowadays we have GPS. It does all the work for you. So things have become a lot easier in trucking as far as you don't have to shift a stick shift. You don't have to sit and write on a little notebook, you know, everywhere you're going, and then drive across the country and hope you didn't make the wrong turn, or, you know, the directions you got weren't messed up. These days we got the GPS. There's all kinds of apps these days on the phones that help find you places to get fuel, places to eat, places to park for the night, things like that. So really, it's just a matter of going to the trucking school, getting your financing in order, and then you have to go take a test at the BMV to obtain your Class A CDL. Now, if the school did a good job and you're super, you know, on top of things, by the time you're ready to take that driving test, you'll pass it with flying colors. I had no difficulty at all when I went to take mine. I went to a really great school here in Ohio. It was a really great program, and by the time I was ready to take my Class A CDL driving test, I got almost the perfect score on everything. So I had really had enough experience in that school with the backing and the maneuvering and the driving out on the roads and the trip planning and stuff like that, that by the time I finally took the test, it was pretty easy for me. So once you have your Class A CDL, you're going to select the company you want to go work for, and when you go to work for that company, they're going to put you with a trainer. This is a person you're going to live in the truck with. I just said, you're going to live in the truck with that person. And you're going to travel around. So they want to put a trainer with you for the first, usually it's like 4 weeks to 5 weeks. so that they can teach you their company policies and how they want you to do things, how they want you to, you know, do the electronic log. They're going to teach you about what's legal on the logs and that kind of thing, and then help you with the navigation and become familiarized with what they haul, where they go, how they do things. Once you get through that process, which I call boot camp, trust me, living in a truck with a total stranger and sleeping together in these 2 bunks back here, one up and one down, for several weeks, it's super, in my view, high stress. So I like to refer to it as a boot camp. Some people love it and have a great experience. I'm not really that kind of person. I don't like sharing my space with other people, except for my animals. And when I went through that process with the trainer, I just found it to be not ideal. Anyway, it's a short period of time, like I just mentioned, a little over a month or so. Once you get through that process, then they'll give you a truck to drive and you're on your own. And at that point, you're writing your own, you're writing your own story, you're writing your own ticket. Now, the first year in truck driving, this video is becoming extremely long, so let me try to wrap it up. The first year that you're on the road truck driving, you're going to make all the mistakes. You're going to have near misses, where you went to the wrong place and then you had to backtrack, or some crazy stuff happened on the highway that frightened you, or you had to drive through a blizzard and you had to shut down and park somewhere and it was hard to find a parking space, or you got stuck in the snow. All the things that, can go wrong, it might go wrong. And you'll learn through all those mistakes. But after the first year, a year on the road, safe driving, no speeding tickets, no accidents, once you've got a year experience, then you're pretty much good to go. You've figured out, and now you've got that experience. And if your first job that you went to work for, say you went to work for a company, a larger company, which a lot of the larger companies take on the new drivers, it might not be the best pay, it might not be the best benefits or the best, trips or whatever. Once you've got a year in, then you can, if you want, change jobs and go find something that's better suited to what you want. Then you can start demanding higher pay. So basically the way it's set up right now, new drivers come in probably making around 55 to 65,000 a year to start, which sounds low, but like I'm saying, after you've been in a year, you can bump your pay up quite substantially. I'm sitting right around 75 to 80,000 a year right now, but I don't drive like crazy. I don't drive like maximum miles all the time, so I could probably make more than that. And if I went to work for a larger company, for example, Walmart, if I went to work at Walmart, I'd be making over 100,000 a year, easily. The thing I don't like about Walmart is you can't have pets, and you're basically just going from one Walmart distribution center to the next. So the job's pretty easy, it pays really well, but it doesn't have a lot of perks in my view as far as on the personal end of things. As far as like benefits, pay, insurance, stuff like that, it's stellar. It's one of the best companies to work for. Again, like I was talking about earlier, these companies that haul the doubles, that do the LTL, less than truckload, most of those companies pay extremely well also. They're all up in the upwards of 90, 95,000 a year. So like I'm saying, I work for this small family company. They don't have the highest pay, they don't have the lowest pay. They're kind of right about there in the middle, but the reason I like working here is because I don't have to run the East Coast, I don't have to run the West Coast, I don't have to go down in the South when it's super hot in the summer, and I'm just working this little area in the middle of the country, which is very easy. Alright, well, that's all the stuff I have to say about truck driving for now. Hopefully I didn't drone on too long. Like I'm saying, this can be a solution, especially if things are not going so great in the economy right now. If you've lost your job and you don't really see any end in sight and you're living in your vehicle because you have to, you could go and do this. You could transition from living in your vehicle to being a truck driver and changing your situation to where now as a truck driver you're earning $65,000 a year, and then by next year you'll be earning possibly $80,000 a year. And like I said, when you're earning that kind of money and you don't have hardly any bills to pay, then you're keeping all that money for yourself. And it could be a really great way to bolster your nest egg or your retirement fund, which is exactly what I'm doing. So that's all I got for now, guys. I hope this is helpful. I'm sorry it was such a long video. I was going to try to keep it short, but I'm not very good at making short videos. Alright. Well, I'm going to head on over to Columbus, Ohio. I have to deliver this load in the morning. I'm taking a break today because I've been out here working for 2 weeks straight without a day off. Now, again, that's my choice. My company's not forcing me to do that. I'm doing that because I'm trying to boost my income right now, because I had just had a lot of expenses with the van, building the van, and my daughter just got married, so I had to spend some money on that wedding. So now I'm out here busting my butt to try to rack up as much money as possible and build my savings account. That's all I got. Well, if you have any questions, just put them down there in the comments. I'm happy to share any information that I have. Like I said, I've been doing this on and off for 25 years. I'm probably just going to keep doing it till I retire at this point, because it seems like a really dependable job, as the economy maybe isn't doing so great with rising costs and these tariffs we have coming in. The fact that I'm hauling food commodities, everybody has to eat, so it makes me feel like my job's pretty secure. All right, I highly recommend hauling food commodities, and if you're going to do that, you have to haul a refrigerated unit. That's what I haul. Basically, as a driver, you're going to haul dry van, which is just a trailer with a wood floor. It's not climate control, so that's commodities like textiles and stuff like that. Or you're going to haul refrigerated. Refrigerated is predominantly for food, or like the load I have right now isn't food, but it's plastics, so it has to be controlled at 65 degrees. So dry box, refrigerated. There's flatbed, which flatbed I think is really difficult because you got to do chains and straps and stuff like that, but it pays really well. Then you have tankers, then you have the doubles, etc., etc. Anyway, you guys got any questions? Put them below. Sorry I was blathering on for such a long time. I hope this video is helpful, and good luck, guys. I think when it comes down to it, in my view, from my personal perspective, if I'm facing economic distress or uncertainty, I will do whatever is necessary to keep myself afloat and to keep my family afloat. I'm not going to just be, oh no, I lost my job and now I'm scared. No, I'm going to be like, what's next? I need to, what's the next thing? Do I have to retool? Do I need to go and do a different vocation? Whatever I need to do to survive financially, that's the way I always look at things. And truck driving is not that scary. And it's really, like I'm saying, it's gotten a lot easier over the years. I mean, one last thing I'll leave you guys with. This video is so long. Another thing is, I have Sirius radio in my truck, which may not seem like a big deal, but I don't pay for it. My company provides it as a perk. So I've got hundreds of channels of music to choose from, news programs, shows. Back in the old days, when I first started out doing this 25 years ago, we didn't have that. We didn't have smartphones and internet and Sirius radio. We didn't have any of these nice amenities that they have today. We didn't even have refrigerators or inverters. A lot of that stuff you had to buy and put in yourself. And like I'm saying, the inverter is really great because I can use it. It's a 110 power. I can use it to plug things in that I might want to utilize for making food or whatever. All right, that's all I got, guys. Once again, comment below if you have any questions. I'm here all day. Bye, guys. All right, bye.